Good morning, friends, and welcome back. Today I am going to take this ancient address book that has never been used, but it is really filthy. It was filthy, as you could see. I cleaned it off, believe it or not. This is the address book all cleaned off. And I needed an idea book or a journal because I'm constantly coming up with ideas and I need to write them down. And since this journal will look different from anything else that I have, I'm always going to be able to find it and I'll keep it on me and I can write the ideas right in there. So this went from looking like this to now it looks like this. So I'll show you how I did this. And since I know most of you don't have an ancient journal like this sitting around or address book, this will work on any pleather or plastic address book that you have, even your planner. You can still update it this way because you get those cheap planners in the store and they're just nondescript. They just have a cover on them basically. You can follow all of these same instructions if you'd like to work on one of those also. I ended up using chalk paint on here because I'm doing a transfer. Transfers to me come out perfectly, or they come out the most vividly when I use chalk paint. I think you can use acrylic on this. I've done it in the past, only I've never tried the transfer over acrylic. If you already know that will work over acrylic paint, go on ahead and do it. But I'm taking this small roller, I'm putting 2 coats of chalk paint on the outside. I'm going to cover the whole surface, both sides, and set it aside to dry. Here's something else that I did with the chalk paint. I have painted pages before. I took this flyer that I got in the mail. It's like a magazine that came from the supermarket. It was this very expensive, colorful ad, but there were about 30 to 40 pages in this. So what I did was I painted all of the pages throughout the day. I would just paint one page, let it dry, then go back, paint the next page. And I just did this all day until the whole thing was covered with chalk paint. You may have a binder inside, which makes it really easy to take all of these pages out and paint them. I have never used spray-on chalk paint because I'm a little paranoid that the spray has just got to get caught up in there, and I would be annoyed that I spent so much money on spray paint and it didn't work, and I don't feel like going back and taking it back, whatever. If any of you have tried it or you know of a good brand, please let me know, because in this case, I would have loved to have just laid a bunch of these pages out and spray painted them. And I definitely want chalk paint on the inside because when you write on it, it's like you're writing on old parchment paper. It's a really cool texture. I also painted 2 coats of the chalk paint. You can see I'm using different colors there. 2 coats of the chalk paint on the inside too. The only reason that I'm using 2 different colors is because I actually have about 4 different bottles or jars of chalk paint where I'm down to the very end. Once the chalk paint was dry inside and out, I went to the graphics fairy and I printed out this black and white violin. I think that's a violin. And I tore out the image because you don't need the whole page here. And I want to do a transfer, and I have to mention, I always use gel medium, a matte gel medium. And by the way, this is a laser print because I also don't have good luck with the inkjet print. So this is from a laser printer. And if you don't have a laser printer, you can go to the copy center and get one, get some prints of whatever you've printed out on your inkjet. There are some people who say they are able to do transfers with the inkjet prints. I just don't have luck with them at all. And I get more questions from people saying the same thing. They ask me, how come this isn't working? I'm using an inkjet printer. It might just take a whole lot of practice and experimentation. So what I did was I just put the matte gel medium over the front of this, laying it down, and I want to press it down as much as I can. Now, something that I do that really helps me with these transfers is I wet my fingers. You want to make sure you press as much of this down as you can. You can use a brayer, your fingers, the back of a spoon. And now I'm going to wet my fingertips, just water, and I'm going to rub this over the back just a little bit. Now I want to see the image coming through. You see how you can start to see now that violin coming through, and a little bit of the paper is coming away. If you do this too hard, this part right here, if you do it too hard, and I'll show you where I did it because I always do, you can pull away a little bit of the image. So you don't want to be too overzealous here. You really just want to get this image to come through. It's a great way to make sure that the image is completely down onto your surface, and it also helps with the first step of removing all of this paper. And I said I'd show you where I rubbed a little too hard. I rubbed there and a couple of other spots, just a little too hard. It's okay because this is supposed to be a vintage looking thing anyway. So I'm just going to put this aside to dry for now. I'll leave that alone. And once it's all dry, and you can put this in an oven at 175 degrees. You can turn the oven off and just leave it sit in there for about 10 or 15 minutes. It does dry very quickly. The idea now is to remove the rest of the paper so that all that's left is your image. So the image will be transferred onto your surface. This might take 2 attempts. What I normally do is I go in and I rub away as much of the paper as I can. I let it dry for like another 10 minutes and I go back, and you can actually feel it. Here's the surface that is dry now, and you can see, especially right there at the bottom, that there's a little paper, but you can also feel it. So you just want to go back in, wet your fingers a little bit again, and go back in and just rub it away. You'll feel when the surface is finally smooth. You can see there are about 3 spaces up there at the top of the violin where I did rub away some of the image, but it's okay in this case because it almost looks like it's supposed to be that way. At least that's how I choose to see it. So I'm going to finish this, and now we'll move on to the decoupage. And now that everything's dry and I've wiped away all of the paper crumbs that are left behind, I'm going to take a napkin, and in this instance, I'm going to cut out the images that I want because I only want them in the top left corner and the bottom right corner. So I'm going to position this and see where I'd like it, and then just cut out that part of the napkin. You will probably want to use, I call them decoupage scissors. They're actually small curved scissors. All of this is on my website, by the way. You can either read about it or you can purchase directly from my website, which goes through Amazon. So if you've got Amazon Prime, you get all of the same features and benefits. And you don't just have to get what's on my website while you're over there. If you find that you still need to pick up some other things for back to school or whatever, you can still just continue to shop on my site. It is a tremendous help to me when you do shop through my site. So thank you for doing that, guys. I'll also have a laser printer over there just in case you say, you know what, I think I'd like to get a laser printer now. So I'm going to cut all of these out. Don't separate your napkins until you're all done cutting. It would be nearly impossible to cut if you just go down to the top layer of the napkin. When you're all done cutting, wet your fingertips and go to the edge of the napkin where it's a little bit sturdier and pull the other layers away. And for this project, I'm going to use napkin decoupage glue. Just looking at how much of a wreck my nails are. Sorry about that. I'm getting a manicure later. And I'm taking a bristle brush and I'm going to dip that in the napkin decoupage glue. Actually, I'm going to wet the brush a little bit first. Whoops. I'm going to wet the brush. Now, I don't have any decoupage glue down on the surface. I'm laying the napkin down flat, and I like to do this on a flat surface, when I'm working on a flat surface. I lay the napkin down. I dampen the brush a little bit. I don't need it soaking wet. I dampen it, then I put it in the decoupage glue, and then I work from the center out. You want to hold the napkin down. Now, the napkin decoupage glue is much thinner than regular decoupage glue. It's not watery, so you don't have to worry about that. But because it's thinner, it seeps into the napkin. And I'm overlapping at the top up here. I'm just going to file those edges away once this dries. And I'm going around the side. And the background color of this particular napkin does match the background color of my piece. In other words, the napkin background is kind of an off-white, and that's the same color as my journal. If you're using a different background color on your napkin from the color of the surface that you're decoupaging over, you would have to cut that out exactly. Make sure that you go all around the edges perfectly. I didn't have to get too carried away here because you can't really see the edges. So I'm just going to finish cutting out the other piece, and I'll decoupage that in the lower right hand corner the same way I decoupaged the part on top. And then I'm going to put this aside to dry. Once everything was dry, I went back in with a nail file. I'm just filing in one direction, and I just filed away any of these loose edges over the tops or the sides. And by the way, I did decoupage over the back of this with a different napkin. There's a tear in the seam there. I'm not even worried about it. This thing's been around for about a minimum of 50 years. It's that old. And I'm just going to cut out one whole piece of the napkin to just cover the whole back and decoupage this on here. And now the front of this, to pull it all together, I'm taking the same color chalk paint that is the background color, and I'm going to splatter it over my surface. But first, you want to experiment with this a little bit because sometimes it can be gloppy and it can come out too fast, and I don't want that. So I wanted to make sure I had just the right amount of chalk paint on this, and sometimes you have to wet the chalk paint to make it a little bit easier to work with here. And I covered the front of it and the back once everything was dry, and I then went in with my top coat, and I'm using the triple thick along with some coarse fiery glitter. That always helps me find my journal when I can't find it. It's so shiny that you can see it out of the corner of your eye. You have to use a bristle brush with the triple thick. Sometimes people write and say they're having problems with the triple thick, and I find out that they're using a sponge brush, and you can't use a sponge brush with the triple thick. You don't want to overwork this. So that just means paint it on, apply it once, go over the brush 2 or 3 times, but don't keep going over it and going back and forth. It dries kind of quickly and you can get into trouble there. While it's wet, I am adding the glitter to the surface, and then I'll shake this off a little bit to let the excess glitter fall off, and the triple thick works like a glue. I have a planner that I did this to easily 10 years ago, and all of the glitter is still on it. It's fiery. It still looks great. So I'm going to put this aside to dry. And now that everything is dry, here's how our journal looks. I'll move it around for you in a couple of minutes too, so you can see how it looks in the light. And considering that this used to look like this Yuck. And it now looks like this. I'm really excited about the way this came out. I know I'm going to use it forever. I wanted to show you a couple of things about this too. I did decoupage the back, as I mentioned to you. Again, added all of the glitter and the top coat. Here's how the spine and everything looks. And on the inside, I wanted to mention you can decoupage the pages if you like. If you're using a high gloss top coat over the pages, you can only write on this with a marker. And if you want to do that, that's fine. It's very intense. You always have to have the marker with you. Or if you'd like, I kept some of the pages with a matte surface. Now, these are the pages that I just painted chalk paint on, and it's so much nicer to write on this. It's just a flat level surface. It feels like you're writing on old parchment paper. And I still have, and you can just use a regular old pen on this. Gel pens work really great. And you can keep the pages blank if you'd like to also. Maybe you like the lines, you want to stay in the lines. But I have found that for me, it's a huge help when I have one specific book, one place where I can put all of my ideas and jot my notes down and make little drawings for myself. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed this and you can put this to use for yourself, because I know I've got some seriously creative friends out there. You guys are always inspiring me. By the way, I have a Facebook page called Upcycle with Decoupage. If you go on over and like and follow the page, you'll be notified on your Facebook page every week when I put a new video out. And the link to my website is just below this video, where you can head on over and purchase things that you want or just read about them. You can also check out the reviews. In the meantime, hope you guys are having a lovely summer. Thank you so much for all of your comments and compliments. I am working with a new microphone. I apologize if the volume has gone up and down or you hear anything in the background. I'm still experimenting with this, and I will get it right for you guys. I apologize if there's any, I don't know, static, or sometimes I can hear little something in the in the microphone. I'll get it right though at some point. And thank you so much for subscribing. Subscriptions are huge over here when you work for YouTube. I'm sure you guys know that. And thank you so much again, guys. I will see you next week with another video. All right, friends. Bye-bye.